Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to have Bruce with us. Bruce, what is this thing called the Accessible Aquarium Project?
Well, there was a realization by researchers here at Georgia Tech in our Center for Assistive Technology and Environmental Access and in my sonification lab that the vast majority of dynamic exhibits at zoos and aquariums are not accessible to people with vision impairments, and so we're setting out to try to change that.
Bruce, what is meant by sonification?
Sonification is the use of sound to convey any kind of data. It's very similar to the concept of visualization, but instead of using things that are visible, we use all kinds of audio. So in the Accessible Aquarium Project, for example, we will communicate the location and the movements of fish using sound.
Bruce, could you go into more detail about how you go about doing that?
By all means. In order to make an exhibit accessible to someone who can't see it, there's sort of a three-step process. The first thing is to figure out what's happening in the tank or in the exhibit. What are the fish doing? Are they swimming? Are they going quickly? Are they all stuck in one corner? The second step is to determine how much of that information and what parts of that information is interesting to a visitor. And the third part is to determine some good ways to convey the information and the exhibit dynamics to the visitor. The first part, understanding what's happening in the tank, we currently use a lot of advanced computer vision techniques. So we have cameras pointing at the tank, and the cameras, along with a lot of software, figure out what's moving and what's standing still, what is part of the background and what is a foreground object or a fish, and then determines or follows the path of those fish as they swim around in the environment. Then that computer vision system passes on its information to currently a sonification module. That's a bunch of software that takes the fish movement data and turns it into music. The music can take on different themes. It can be jazz or it can be rock and roll, and it conveys the movements of the fish, the size and shape and type of fish, and also provides a very nice aesthetic listening experience for the visitor.
I'm trying to think of an example, but let's say that there's a larger fish and it should happen to be moving towards the front of the tank or closer to a visitor. Do you have any idea perhaps what type of audible cues could be used to indicate that?
Certainly. The typical mappings we'll use are pretty straightforward. So, for example, from left to right, as the fish moves from left to right in the tank, we can move the sound from left to right in the stereo space. That is, it may start in your left headphone and move across to your right headphone as the fish moves from left to right across the tank. So that's the left-right mapping. Then you've got the up-down mapping. So as the fish goes up to the top of the tank, closer to the surface of the water, we'll typically raise the pitch or the frequency of the notes. So as it climbs up in the tank, then the notes would go bum 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 bum, and you'll get the idea that the fish is rising up. As the fish moves closer to you, it becomes more salient or more obvious visually, and the way we deal with that through sound is to make the sound louder. So if it's off in the distance, in the back of the tank, it's quiet and it's soft, and as it moves forward, it gets louder and more prominent. Some other things that we look at are speed. So one thing is how quickly the fish is moving around in the tank. We map the speed of the fish onto the tempo of the notes. So in a musical pattern, if the fish is just hovering, you might hear bum, 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 bum. But if it's moving very quickly, you might hear bum, 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 bum. And you can very quickly get the idea that the fish is moving more quickly. Another component that we can track is the size or the type of fish. So a whale shark might be a low-pitched cello or a bom 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 bom, whereas a very small fish might be a high-pitched plink, 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 or a piccolo sound. So these are the ways we can take information about the location and the movement and the size and the type of creatures in the environment, in the exhibit, and then map them onto music.
Bruce, there's a gigantic aquarium there in Atlanta called the Georgia Aquarium. Are there any thoughts about making that a part of the Accessible Aquarium project?
Most certainly. One of the important aspects of this whole project is understanding how tour guides and docents convey what they convey to a visitor. That is, when you go to one of these places like the Georgia Aquarium or the Tennessee Aquarium, the visitor experiences the fish and the exhibits on their own for some times,